everyone. Welcome back to the show. Today we have Genevieve King. She is a woman passionate about connecting children with nature and wants to create generations of eco-conscious individuals. We'll find out more in this interview about Origins Education, which is her business she founded in 2011, and her background in early childhood education with advice on how to run a large multifaceted business for our listeners. So I've never had someone in this sector before in preschool. I mean, I did have one guest, Megan Camille, who had founded a preschool, but at this point was out of the early childhood education field. So I think for our audience, stick around. This could be very thought-provoking. And I'm a little bit selfish. I have a child who's going to be preschool age in probably a year. Yes, a year. So I want to dig into that as well for my own personal curiosity. All right. So don't forget, for our audience, have you downloaded the Money Mapper yet? The link is at the bottom of the show notes, and you can use this plug and play worksheet to help you discover financial independence and grow your business. So Genevieve, welcome so much. Welcome so much.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you so much for being on the
show. You are so welcome.
So tell us a little bit about Origins, how you decided to create this business. And I noticed you now have 4 brick and mortar locations with a 5th on the way, right? So tell us more about Origins curriculum.
Yeah, so 2 different companies. So Origins Education was kind of the parent company of Origins Curriculum, which came later. But I founded Origins Education in 2011. But my sort of entry into early childhood education was totally by accident. I initially started at the University of Montana on a triple medical major. I wanted to follow in my father's footsteps. He's a now retired orthopedic, and I wanted to go into sports medicine. So in high school, I was like the football trainer and, taping ankles and doing all the things. I just love sports. I grew up very much a tomboy, and that was my area I was going into. I was going to do exercise physiology, physical therapy, athletic training. And while I was going to school, I was trying to, I had paused temporarily, moved to another state for a while, came back to go back to school. And I had my oldest daughter, and I was trying to find a place to bring her while I was taking classes. And so I toured schools all over, and every place I went to, I was just thinking, I am not going to leave my child here. This is not, nothing felt comfortable. Nothing felt right. And I ended up.
What was it though? What was it that you think didn't feel right?
I just, I probably toured 12 or 13 different schools, from like in-home daycares to larger schools. And just, some was kind of egregious. Like I walk in, and particularly more of the in-home ones. And I definitely don't want to trash in-home facilities, because there are some absolutely fantastic ones. But at the time, this was way back in, the mid 90s, aging myself appropriately. I would walk into a tour, and the TV is on. There's kids just sitting in front of the TV, a pack of cigarettes on the counter. It was just, there was a lot of like, oh my God, no. I could see the food, as frozen pizzas and frozen fries and things like that. And I was just, I didn't want to do it. I ended up bringing her to the preschool that was on campus at the university, which is a very good school. All the teachers there are working to get their degrees in early childhood education. They have a giant budget, everything is nice and new, but it was really large. Like there was 70 kids, I think, in that main area, and she was completely overwhelmed. It was too big for her. And every day when I would go to drop her off, she would be screaming, crying, like holding on to me, and I would have to peel her little fingers off of me and like give her away while she's screaming, mommy, mommy, and holding her arms out. And it was just absolutely heart-wrenching. I would literally cry every day walking to class after leaving her there. And I was just like, I'm not going to be able to do this 5 days a week. Like, I can't do this. So I switched my whole schedule around and stacked all my classes on Tuesday, Thursday. So I had Monday, Wednesday, Friday off. And I got licensed to do childcare where I was living. And I just took 3 other kids and her, and was with her all day on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And it was just to get me through school so I could kind of be with her. But I ended up having the most fun ever with these little class of kids that I taught how to read, and their parents were like, how did you do that? And it was a blast. It was just so much fun, and it just sparked something in me. And I ended up, after I finished going to school where I moved to Washington, and ended up working at two facilities in Washington. They were actually like pilot programs that were attached to the public school system. So in Seattle public school system, it was like through United Way or some other, large nonprofit like that, but it was at the actual grade school, a preschool at the grade school. So it was kind of a different deal. But when I started there, they didn't have any curriculum or anything. And so I said, can I like develop a curriculum? And they were like, go for it. So I went around and I interviewed all of the kindergarten teachers and the first grade teachers there at the schools. And I said, so tell me, what do you need? What would you like kids to know when they go to kindergarten? Like, what is the top skill sets that you need kids to have? And, typically at public school, there's big giant classes with one teacher, maybe a TA. And, particularly going into kindergarten, you've got kids with a huge wide variety of experiences and backgrounds coming together into a class to start their educational career. So you've got kids that are, from lower socioeconomic backgrounds that maybe were in, not the greatest daycares, or just being watched by my family members or things like that. You've got kids that were in, federal programs like Head Start. You've got kids that were in like high-end private preschools that show up to kindergarten knowing all their phonics, and they can write their name, and they know how to tie their shoes. And, it's just this huge wide variety of kids, but teacher has to just pick a lane and stay with it. These classes are really big. And so I think what happens, and I know this is what happens when you do studies on kids that drop out of high school and you look at them, they were behind from the very beginning. And when you think about being a young kid for the first time, everybody's sitting on the floor, crisscross applesauce in front of the teacher, and the teacher's, showing something and saying, okay, who knows what this is? And, raising your hand, I know. If you think about what it would be like to be that child that really has no idea, like how to answer this, and all these kids around them are raising their hand and they don't know like what that does to you inside. And for the opposite, the kids that know how that, you're right, good job, how that sparks, you're like, I want to learn, that pride, versus the kids that are like embarrassed and don't know. And so it really just made me think so much about, wow, what can I do to help put kids in the best possible position? And so I moved back to Montana and opened up my first school that I owned fully, that was a big school. And this was back in 2002, I think. And I ran that school. I actually ended up opening two of them right side by side, so I could take older kids like after school and summer camp and things like that. And I did that from 2002 to 2008. And during those years, I kind of got a little burnt out. I had my second daughter, and I was raising her in that program at that time. So I have two daughters. And so I took a break, and I got hired as the executive director of a nonprofit green business consulting firm. And it was called the Sustainable Business Council. It doesn't exist anymore, but this was a organization, a membership-based organization. And I switched from teaching kids to teaching adults about sustainability. So I was deep in this world of, conscious capitalism, slow food, slow money, farm to table, the localization movement, right? The buy local movement, which you may have seen. So this is what I was doing. And after, for some years of trying to teach adults how to undo these deeply ingrained bad habits, I realized that, every social movement needs to have an education component. And at this time, like in the early 2000s, so this was like 2008, 2009, sustainability and green and eco-conscious was really starting to just pick up. This is when you started hearing these concepts of like greenwashing and things like that, where people were, that's when this really started blowing up. And sustainability, you were starting to see universities having like sustainability degrees and sustainability courses. It was really the beginning. And at that time, there were schools that called themselves green schools, but it was in operation, right? So we recycle all our paper,
Yes, 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 yes.
and we, turn off the lights and conserve water and things like that. But there wasn't anybody teaching sustainability to kids. It was all, college courses were starting to pop up here and there, but in the United States, there wasn't much of teaching kids about this. So in my mind, I was just thinking, wow, okay, I have this background in early childhood education. I know that these early years, like pre-K into like mid-grade school, second grade, third grade, things like that, that's when the human brain has the most prolific growth. It's like 1 million neural connections per second or something like that. And this is when our default modes are set during these years. This is when human beings start to learn, who am I versus everything else out here? What is a human's place on planet Earth? What is our, so it's these big, giant, foundational concepts that are happening in a child. And so I was thinking, wow, this is the time to really like teach kids these fundamental ideals of kind of basic tenets of sustainability, right? And because then these become default modes. So when this child grows into an adult, they already get it. So we're not trying to undo these bad habits. And bringing in a mindfulness component, this was really big. I was really starting to get into mindfulness at this time in my own life, starting to get into meditation. Meditation, again, that was another sort of a buzzword that was happening in the corporate world, right? Silicon Valley, there's people coming in teaching people about mindfulness and how huge that can affect you in the corporate world. So again, let's plant these seeds at this age, at this young age, when it becomes the default mode. So, we spend our whole adult lives trying to undo our childhood trauma. So it's like, if we can teach kids how to be mindful, how to, recognize and manage emotions at this young age, they're going to be so far ahead of what, we are trying to learn these things now in our, 30s, 40s and beyond. So after that, I decided, what, I want to go back to teaching, but I'm going to take everything that I've learned in the world of corporate sustainability, and I'm going to put it together with everything I know about early childhood education. And so I started Origins Education. And so that was my first preschool with this new curriculum that really infused academics with eco-literacy and mindfulness. And so that was 2011 when I started the first one. I opened the second one in 2017. I opened the third one in 2017 and the fourth one in 2019. So it was just kind of like boop, 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 boop. And
so then those were all preschools and they're all in Montana.
All
right?
in Montana. Yes. Yes.
And then from there, you develop the curriculum that anyone can use, right?
Right. So how that happened. So we were using this curriculum at our schools the whole time. And as I was, growing and seeing how many people just wanted this, and, seeing the success of the curriculum playing out in my brick and mortar schools, my initial idea was to franchise. So I started developing the whole franchise packet. I talked to the local banks. I got, the bank that was my main bank was going to, fund people. They had watched me grow over all of these years. And so they were ready to fund people. We had a nonprofit community development organization that was going to be a backup financing for people who maybe couldn't pass, the credit, hurdles, things like that, and put the whole package together. And I was actually having a conversation with a mentor of mine who was running the Blackstone Launchpad, which is a sort of a business development and accelerator that goes through the University of Montana. And I was visiting with him about this plan and showing him everything I had put together for beginning to franchise Origins. And I remember he asked me, it was like this pivotal moment. He asked me, Genevieve, what's your goals for yourself for the next 3 to 5 years? Just your personal goals, not work goals. And instantly I said, to have less stress in my life.
Yeah.
And he just kind of laughed and he said, you think franchising is going to be less stress? And I remember just this instant, like, it felt like a punch in the gut, like the wind just coming out of my sails. I realized, oh my God, no, this is going to be so much work. This is going to be so much more stressful. And it was just this, I had this whole thing that happened, and I don't know how long I should ask him if he remembers that conversation and how long I was silent for. But I just had this whole thing just whirl around in my mind. And all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute. Instead of trying to help people build brand new schools from the ground up, why don't I just take the curriculum, package the curriculum, and sell it to schools that are already open?
Already
That's
established, right?
much
Yeah.
quicker. It's a much quicker way to really spread the ideals, which is what I was trying to do in the first place with franchising. Way less risk on my end, way less, I've already got it. So if I could just develop this, create something. And so Origins curriculum was born. So in 2020, so Origins Education was an S Corp, Origins curriculum is a C Corp. So it's kind of the parent company, but that's how the whole thing began. And then of course this is 2020, so COVID.
Yeah.
So what
was that
started,
good for your business though? I mean, for the curriculum aspects, because people could take it at home, right? And do it at
yes, so
home.
I think yes, it was really challenging for for the schools, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, we were shut down for 3.5 months, and I mean, really COVID affected most businesses in a I would say probably negative or at least very challenging way. But for the curriculum, initially I was just going to package and sell. It was going to be a B2B to other preschools. But then I suddenly was like, oh no, we got to do grade school curriculum too. So I hired a whole team, and we developed from the foundation and the core points of the curriculum. We developed a full grade school curriculum. So we sell curriculum to schools and to families. So we have a B2B and a B2C product. So we sell to homeschool families, micro schools, alternative schools, charter schools, and preschools, but pre-K all the way through elementary, like a full year-round curriculum. And then we have supplemental curriculum for middle school and high school. So that just became a whole new thing.
Way to pivot and and change during the pandemic and think about how to reach more people. That's really cool. So for our audience, I found this on your page. Genevieve says our lesson plans are designed based on 3 essential understandings: that the earth is a living body of interconnected patterns of relationships, that by knowing nature's ways, we can learn more about who we are and how we are part of nature, and that mindfulness is a way for us to know ourselves and experience our belonging to the earth. Now, I don't know if I missed this. I think this would be really cool. Your webpage, when I was on there, I thought it would be fun to see if there were any locations nearby me that had the Origins curriculum, but I didn't see a feature for that. Is that something that you would think about doing or working on?
Yes, absolutely. That is actually something. We're developing a very big community right now. We have a private Facebook group. We have a public Facebook page, of course, but we have a private Facebook group. We're just getting ready to start launching weekly Zoom meetings, Zoom calls for everybody. But we are in the process, because there's another product, which I'll tell you about, that we're just in the final editing of, but we're going to have a full kind of directory. So you'll be able to look up and see in what state, in what city, so people are able to connect with one another. So in addition to the curriculum for schools and children, we've developed an educator certification course. So this is going to be for adults. It can be for parents who want to teach. It can be for educators, pre-K all the way through university, and also can be used for workplace, professional development. And so once this is completed, it's looking like it's going to be anywhere from like a 16 to a 24 maybe hour course. And so this is something that companies can use for, on the corporate end, but also, so it could be for absolutely anybody that wants to learn more about how to educate in this manner. And so one of the benefits of this for educators is somebody can complete this course, and we're going to give a whole package on how to start your own school if somebody wants to start, a preschool or a micro school or do homeschool
Yeah.
pods, things like that. So educators will have an educator directory as well. So if there's like a family who really would love to be able to homeschool, but they both work and they're like, I don't know how to do this, but I would love to have my child do this. Well, let's look and see where there are people that are certified eco educators in your area
Yeah.
that could start a homeschool pod. So it's really sort of a way to bridge and come up with more alternative education options for people who may not feel that they have the ability to pull their kids from public school or want to do something different like that.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. So I did want to ask quickly, I noticed in your background you are from Flathead Reservation on Montana. So how do you think your upbringing and culture plays into the business that you've now formed and created?
Yeah, absolutely huge. I am a non-enrolled member of the reservation, so I'm not an enrolled tribal member there. But growing up there my whole life, being immersed in this,
Wait, can you
indigenous
tell us a little bit
culture.
more about that being enrolled versus non-enrolled for those of us who don't know, like myself, what that
Yes,
means?
sorry. So somebody that's an enrolled tribal member is considered an enrolled tribal member. So so most reservations are open basically to any residents, non-enrolled or not. So
Okay.
you don't have to be a tribal member to live on the Flathead Reservation, basically.
Okay. Okay.
So but growing up there, growing up in that culture, growing up, and just totally side, Montana is just a beautiful, stunningly beautiful place, so being immersed in nature in general, and then just growing up where I grew up, being so connected to nature, so connected to the land, and just, within a culture that lives in balance, and just kind of growing up with those ideals of living in balance, and it's a very different type of culture, basically. It's kind of hard to describe. I'm thinking about, times that I lived in other areas. It's just kind of the difference between being in a very clearly, I guess, capitalist sort of culture, like living in a big city, versus, living in in the small towns. It's just much more connected. That's what I could say. The best way to describe it.
I was
And
looking at your Instagram, and just the nature in there is just
yeah.
stunning. Your personal Instagram and the photos, and like one of the ones from your past summer, seeing the deer and the lakes, and then there was one with like being really cold and you were in like a hot spring or something, which I don't think you were doing ice baths or anything because you guys were in there for a while.
No, it
But
was ice.
it was like, no, really.
Yeah.
I didn't believe that. I was like, is this ice or is this hot? And I was like, no, it's got to be hot, right? It's got to be a hot spring. But no, it was
No,
ice. Oh, cold, cold, cold. That looked cold.
nope.
Okay.
That's during like a sweat ceremony.
Yeah, because
Going
you said something
into
in the
like a
caption about
sauna.
sweat. So I was like,
Yeah.
oh, it must be a hot spring.
Yeah, no,
Nope.
that's jumping in the cold water after being in the hot and going back and forth.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I've done that before. Not outside.
Yeah.
Not outside. But yeah, but if you guys have a moment to our audience, you should check out. We'll definitely put her personal Instagram in there, and it's just stunning. It's stunning. And fun fact, so we are in like the depths of the plague right now, in our family.
Yeah.
And my husband was like, we need to move. Like, we're in
Uh,
Massachusetts. We're closing the windows all the time. We need to move to somewhere better. What is the state that has the least amount of flu cases and like colds? It was actually Montana.
oh, that's so interesting.
I thought it was Hawaii or like somewhere warm. Actually, the worst places were North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, and Alabama. They had the worst cases of
Wow.
the flu. I don't know why. Maybe there's more people, so they report it more, but I don't know. I thought it was
Well,
very interesting.
Montana has a very small population.
That's what I was thinking.
You,
I was like, maybe people get the cold and they just don't go to like, it's like 45 minutes to their doctor or something. So they don't bother telling them. I don't know. So there's no
well,
reports of it.
it's the fourth biggest state in the United States, but we only have a little over 1 million people in the whole state.
Oh my
So
gosh.
it's definitely much less sparsely populated. There's only like four, and you wouldn't even call them really big cities, but like, the four biggest cities in Montana have like, less than 200,000 people.
Can't even
So
imagine. Can't even
yeah,
imagine.
yeah.
So you were talking a
Those,
little bit about like, living in balance, especially as you're, you were brought up on the Flathead Reservation and bringing that into your work. How do you think you managed to achieve over time this balance with your personal life, with your work life? And especially you talk about that story, like, aligning with your personal goals, and your goal wasn't to have more stress and to have these franchises, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
how does this balance play into your life, and how have you been able to bring it into your life as you've grown?
Well, it's definitely an ongoing journey, I would say. Striving for balance is something that, I definitely don't have it all figured out. I definitely haven't reached that, constant state of homeostasis. I get there. I have those moments. I try to revel in them when I have them. But, being an entrepreneur for the most part is just innately high stress. So I've kind of learned to deal with my, sort of this chronic background stress that's always there. Mindfulness is a huge component of that. So that I still, when I, visit my doctor and things, and we talk about, how can we reduce stress? It's still an ongoing, I'm not going to say struggle, an ongoing journey. And I think that's true of everybody. I feel like mindfulness is such a huge component of this, and having a balance, like we chatted about earlier, a work-life balance. And it's something that's just constantly evolving. For me, that, when I use the term living in balance, speaking specifically about nature, living in a way, understanding, sort of areas of consumption. We talk about in the curriculum, there's the difference between what you need and what you want. And in that gap is where the biggest impact to the earth happens, is in that gap between what we want, between what we need and what we want. And so, just really trying to cultivate a life of being conscious of the impact that we have on the planet, I think is a huge piece. But, there's so many components to, sort of my mindfulness practice. And I would say the foundational piece of this is gratitude. And gratitude is really the seat of everything else that comes with it, because, our perspectives truly create our reality. And if you have a perspective of gratitude, if you're constantly looking at ways that, there's ways that our lives, that there think things to be grateful for, and especially in these times that we're living in right now, and things that are happening in other parts of the world. A lot of times when I'm feeling really stressed about something, starting another location or something like that, and I'm getting no sleep, and I'm super stressed out, and we're short staffed, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, poor me. And then I think, gosh, these are really, really first world problems that I'm having right now. Oh, boo-hoo, I'm 2 employees short of my, and it's really putting things back in perspective of like, there is so much to be grateful for. And that's something that, I really got from my mom. I would say she used to tell us whenever things were like in our little kid minds, something bad happened, or we're really upset or disappointed about something, or, just in a funk, that would be the time when it's time to do a gratitude check. And that's what she called it. Okay, let's do a gratitude check. And it really just sort of resets things, like, okay, well, this is what's not happening. Because there's a lot of struggles that are not happening that could be happening. So really just kind of keep starting with that foundation of gratitude, I think, is huge. And then, taking time to be mindful, and a lot of times people think of mindfulness and meditation as, you have to, find a time in your busy day to like sit silently for 30 or 60 minutes. And, often if you're anything like me, even though I can think, well, I've got to be able to find that amount of time, it's like from the second you wake up, it's emails, phone calls, I got to respond to this text, oh, I have a meeting, I got to run here. And it's just like, if you're waiting to find that perfect chunk of time, it's a lot more challenging.
You forget. So, I mean, because you think to
yeah,
yourself, yeah, like I'll totally find that time. today.
Right.
I've done it before. And then like they're all summer. I said to myself, I'm going to go outside and play for half an hour every day because we have a basketball hoop, we have a badminton net. I'm like, I'm going to find some time to play. Right. We have also an archery set. Did I do it once this summer? No. I need to like actually put it in my calendar or something. But I know what you're talking about because you say, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And then
Yep.
things stack up, things pile up. You keep doing stuff and you forget.
Absolutely. And it also is a priority thing too. Like, well, I just heard this other email come in and I forgot. Let me handle this first. It's
Mm.
always like that'll be what I do in my spare time when I get everything else done.
Mm-hmm.
But, as an entrepreneur, often there's always more to do. There's always things that aren't done. The to-do list, is I knock 10 things off in one day, but then I add 12. So
Yeah.
it's just kind of this ever-growing thing. So what I've
What
learned to do,
what is your mindfulness practice? Sounds like you're about to go there, but can you share with us what
yeah,
do you do to keep mindfulness at the forefront of your day?
absolutely. So it's what I would refer to as like mini meditations. And this is something that we teach the kids as well. There are moments that you can thread together throughout your whole entire day that are mini meditations. Like let's use washing your hands, especially in a childcare situation. You're washing your hands tons of times a day. We're having our kids wash their hands when they come in from outside, before they have a snack, after they go potty. It's something that we do multiple times a day, no matter what. When you're washing your hands, just completely zone into it. What does the water feel like on your skin? What does the smell of the soap smell like? Listen to the way the water sounds and how it changes when you move your hands through it, how it falls into the bottom of the sink. Like all of these things. You take what could be a 30-second mundane that you're not even thinking about, and suddenly you're like stretching time out. You're getting completely grounded. That is 100% mindfulness right there.
It's like being totally present and observing.
Exactly. You
I
got
have
it.
a friend who's very, very good at like meditation, being present. And I remember texting him after my first child was born and saying, I've never been more present than having a baby. Like it shocked me because I had been trying and didn't really work or like, didn't find time or my mind was all over the place. And I said to him, I was like, I really literally am just thinking, and it was almost like basic survival, but I was like looking at her and watching her and I need to sleep. And like everything was so present moment. I've never felt that since having my second born kind of, but having a first distracts you more,
Yeah.
So it was
Yeah.
like the firstborn, those moments of just silence and being with her and being so tired that your brain can't think of a million other things.
Yes.
It was a very strange experience for about like 2 months where it was very present and moment to moment.
Absolutely. That's exactly what it is. And, you think about transitions, how many times you have a transition throughout the day when you're going from one activity to another.
Mm.
When you have to hop in your car to go run an errand, close the door. And it's something you have to do anyway. If you just, before you even put your seatbelt on, shut the door, you're holding your steering wheel, and you just take one deep breath.
Yep.
Feel the steering wheel. What does the inside of your car smell like? Just a few seconds. What's it sound like when you click the seatbelt in? Just take that second. Same thing when you're about to get out of the car, but right, and you turn your car off, you push the button, you turn the key. Just, you can string these little moments of presence all throughout your day. And you do this at every transition, in between different activities, when you're going from one thing to another. And pretty soon you've got a couple hours all strung together of presence. And
Mm.
it doesn't seem like it would make a difference. It makes a huge difference.
Mm.
And, I'm somebody who has always struggled with what I would consider, traditional meditation. My mind is something else. And when I try to sit and meditate, it is just
Monkey brain. That's what it's actually called, I think. In
it
Buddhism,
is,
I
yeah,
want to
monkey
say.
brain.
Yeah.
Monkey brain. And I found that when I at different times of my life, when I've said I'm scheduling in a meditation practice, I'm going to do even 15 minutes like every day at this time, and I schedule it, during that 15 minutes would be when I would remember all of the things that I hadn't done. So it ended up just being like a brainstorming time where I would write down things. Oh, I forgot this, I forgot that.
Yeah.
Was not what it was supposed to be. And I remember having this conversation with my brother, and I need to look this up after this call because I've been asked this before and I can't remember his name, but it's a gentleman who is he has a meditation practice. I think he even has an app. It's a mindfulness app, but he talks about, and my brother was telling me this, and it really was kind of this light bulb moment, that people think that to be successful at meditation, you have to sit silently in lotus position and all your thoughts go away. And if you're in that monkey mind the whole time, that's not, you failed.
Yeah.
You didn't meditate. But that's not what meditation is. Meditation is start again. So as soon as you realize, oh, I'm thinking again, let me focus back on my breathing, start again. And then it goes again. Oh, start again. Even if you start again 25 times in 5 minutes, you just meditated. And so if you think about it in that way, it's just starting again. It's catching it and bringing it back, catching it and bringing it back. It's not even about how long you're back. It's the catching part that is being mindful. And I was like, oh, then maybe I'm not failing every time. So that was actually really encouraging. So kind of, thinking about it in those terms, and then also finding the presence that you can string along all throughout the day.
Yeah.
Those two things right there kind of flipped my idea that I can't meditate on its head, or that I can't be mindful. And this is part of what we teach in the curriculum as well. And it
sounds like kind of brings a little bit of that work-life balance to your
absolutely.
life. Yeah.
Yes.
You're just more present throughout the day and more
Absolutely.
aware. And the gratitude sounds like huge. I go through like stages of gratitude, like sometimes I'll be listing it out. I'm so grateful and like it's helped. And then something happens, right? I get sick or like something life blows up in my face and I forget the practice. But there's so many studies out there that say that when you're gratitude and when you have that gratitude check, when you have gratitude, when you're grateful, when you acknowledge the things in your life, you are more happy as an individual. And my husband is so good at it. Oh my gosh, it drives me crazy actually sometimes. Like I'll be complaining about something and he's like, you're not in a war zone right now. And I'm like, that's like, I can still have my feelings, but he's like, he's so good at it. It's almost annoying. Actually, it is annoying sometimes. It's sometimes very frustrating.
Yes.
So you want to talk a little bit about hiring. You've obviously been through a lot of hiring. What do you think are some mistakes or challenges you've had from hiring? And what advice would you give other women entrepreneurs?
Yeah. Well, and I'm thinking, this may or may not extend into every industry, because I think there's a lot of difference in, we're going to use the term childcare. I'm using early childhood education, right? But in the world of childcare, early childhood education, whether it's a preschool or a daycare or anything like that, where you're working with young children, it is a very unique industry. It is typically a very high stress industry, and historically has a very high turnover rate. I mean, we're talking like fast food type turnover. And it's because of how challenging it is. When you think about, you're a parent and you have two.
Yes.
So what it's like to run around and take care of two kids if you're by
I'm
yourself.
I'm losing my mind sometimes. So like seriously losing my mind sometimes. And I go to the daycare to pick up my son and I'm like, how do these people do it day in and day out? Like, wow.
Because you think what we're doing is we're asking people to be single parents to 4 to 6 children. That's the teacher ratio. It's going to be a 4 to 1 typically if you have babies. And once they're like, 2 years old or older, that can jump up to 8, 10.
Yeah. I think they have 2 toddler classrooms. I feel like there's 6 in his classroom, but who knows? 6 to 2, I think, at least. And there's different helpers. There's definitely at least 2 people consistently I've seen in there. But who knows? There's always a kid out sick. I don't know how many there actually are. There's always like one kid out.
Yeah. But basically we're becoming single parents to multiple, quadruplets, sextuplets for, 40 hours a week plus, right? And, dealing with that day in, day out, it's a challenging job. And so there tends to be a lot of high turnover. And the acclimation period of hiring somebody is a very long process because, state licensing, people have to go through full background checks. They have to, first aid CPR. There's all these different licensing classes that have to be taken before they're legal to be on the floor. Then there's a huge acclimation process once you get them hired and they're legal. Then there's all this time where they have to learn the schedule. They have to learn each of the individual kids. There's, kids with allergies. There's, it's this very complex process.
Or you have a
And
kid like mine that I get a biting report incident almost every time.
yep,
We got to work on that and bring in an
listen,
occupational therapist if we can. And then I have to talk to a pediatrician. It's like this whole thing. Like, I feel bad for them because it's like, oh man.
it's a lot. It's a, and I think about, boy, and you chose to do this. This is kind of the highest liability career you could ever have. You're like, here, give me your child. I'll see you later. Give me your baby. There's not a higher liability thing you can do than taking somebody's child.
Yeah.
And, often in this industry, teachers tend to be younger.
Yeah, I noticed that. A lot of them are younger. I mean, mad respect to all of them. And honestly, my center where I put my son, they are amazing. They're really good. But yeah, they are all younger. And I was wondering about that.
It's pretty typical. Childcare and teaching does not pay well. And so, obviously if there's, big corporate chain preschools that have giant budgets and they're hiring, all their teachers have to have, masters of education and things like that, that's a little bit different. But typical preschools and daycares, it's very low pay. It's not a business you get into to make money. Hence why I ended up opening another location, because it's just, one teacher's tuition wipes out 2 to 3 kids, or one teacher's wages wipes out like 2 to 3 kids' tuitions. And if you have a 4-to-1 ratio, do the math. You're not, liability insurance is incredibly expensive. We can only pay teachers what we can afford to, or what parents can afford to pay. So we can only pay teachers what parents can pay. And it's something that the parent end, you hear that complaint all the time. Oh my God, daycare is as much as in-state college tuition. Childcare is so expensive. It's way too expensive. It's
for some women, it's their salary. And that's why they leave their career, because they're like, well,
100%.
What's the point? My kid's getting sick all the time. There's all these issues. Like, I might as well just teach my kid myself and be home, be a stay-at-home mom.
That's exactly it.
And like that frustrates me because, right, as an entrepreneur, I'm like, I want to see more women entrepreneurs. I want to see more women in careers, but I understand the struggle too. My son's only in 2 days a week. He will eventually be bumped up to 3 days a week and hopefully then more as we go on. But it's still like, dang, it's a lot of money.
It is. And they're barely making anything. The providers are barely making anything. So it's just, the system itself, I think in order to be truly successful in this industry, you have to have multiple locations.
He's in a Bright Horizons, so that's like
huge. Yeah.
But those differ too from like town to town, and depends on like the director and stuff. Like this one had really great reviews. I love the director; she's really great. But yeah, that can, as a franchise, depends on who owns it, who's running it, et cetera.
100%.
Yeah.
So it's a challenging industry. So for me, hiring is probably very different than someone who owns a little boutique and they've got a retail store and they need them, it's a way different animal.
So then let's focus on this question. How do you deal with a lot of turnover? What are best practices for that?
I mean, I opened multiple locations, and honestly, the franchising and starting the curriculum initially was me trying to have another stream of income so that I could put back into the business so I could pay people more. Because they deserve to make more money. I pay more than most people, most places. I'm one of the higher paying facilities in my area, and it's still not even close to what people should be making. I provide, a DPC health insurance, which is like it's a direct primary care health insurance. So it doesn't cover like hospitalizations and things like that. I can't afford to give full coverage insurance, but I give, direct primary care insurance. We have, paid time off, things like that. But it's really, really challenging. So, obviously being able to pay more, providing benefits, having really strong work-life balance, having lower, so I have more teachers on than what the state requires. So we have a higher teacher to student ratio than what most places have. I have extra teachers on the floor. And my school's Origins, we're all organic. We serve all organic foods. We have huge, huge food costs. I'm serving 100 plus meals a day. You know how much one bag of organic groceries costs. So, I have really high overhead. So, and I'm also probably the most expensive place in my city as well. I don't want to be this, elite, 1%, only the top earners can afford to go to my school. We accept the state scholarships, but I have to charge a rate difference in between, because the difference between what we charge per day versus what the state pays per day is huge, almost twice as much. But I developed my own scholarship program. So for people who don't qualify for state assistance, we have a discount available. But I wasn't able to do any of this. I wasn't able to provide benefits or anything like that until, I think, the first time I was able to do any benefits was after we had opened the third location. So it's a very, very unique industry in that way. So the hiring practices, things like that. But again, these are things that are across the board. Having good benefits, having strong support for work-life balance. We try to be as flexible as possible. I try to have enough staff on hand that we can support people taking time off when they need to, things like that. I try to be as flexible as possible. We have a very strong kind of family atmosphere. I mean, we refer to ourselves as the Origins family, and that's both clients and staff, both at the brick and mortar schools and with the curriculum. You're joining part of the Origins family. And so, really just trying to cultivate an environment of that sort of unconditional love and support. And, again, heavy on the mindfulness. We really encourage our teachers to have strong self-care practices, things like that. So I think those are things that will cross over into any industry when we're talking about hiring. But it's definitely the biggest challenge, I would say, of all of the different aspects of being an entrepreneur, is managing other people, and particularly through a pandemic, because even the most ideal employee you could possibly have, things happen to people, and you have people that sometimes have to quit with no notice, or things come up, mental health issues come up, things like that. And so that's always been the biggest challenge for me, is definitely managing other people, and particularly managing other people that are taking care of people's children. So it's a lot to hold, for sure.
It's hard. It is hard. And the practice of finding a day, we've been through everything, actually. So we've done in-home daycare, we've done nannies, and we've done daycare center at this point with both kids in combination. And I love the daycare center because I like the reliability. I know they're going to be there, and I know they're going to be open, and I know I can drop off my son. Don't like the diseases we get from, I don't want to say diseases. Since we're in the middle of the plague, that's what I'm calling it. There's a lot of sickness, right? That I don't love, but the organization, and at least in my daycare center, it's great. The in-home daycare was good in the beginning, but then I started noticing a lot of TV. I started noticing when my daughter could talk, when she started being able to talk, the things she would kind of slip out about her experience. I was like, huh? What? Like, funny story. I took a shower once. I put my, head in like the wrap, not the head, but the towel in the wrap on my head. And she goes, oh, I won't say her name, but so-and-so does that. And I was like, if so-and-so is doing that, that means she's taking showers when she's supposed to be watching you guys. What? So that blew my mind. Then she started like talking about like Paw Patrol and stuff like that. And like, it was funny, right? Because you'd show up and the TV would be off and everything looked fine. But then my daughter would, when she started to talk, would tell me those things. And I was like, oh man, I'm not loving this. So we did that. We did nannies. But we had a high turnover in nannies. And this was for my son who's now in daycare center. What I noticed is that he's like the biting and everything. He's struggling with socialization because we had nannies for so long, but we couldn't get in. It was due to the pandemic. We could not get into daycare centers. There was like waiting lists. They were short staffed. We finally got in this past September, and I've been so happy about that. But our first choice was a daycare center. But we did the nannies and they were fine. It was just, I did realize that like now he's having a lot of trouble with other kids. He does not know how to play with them. I know we got to wrap this up quickly. So I have just a few questions for you. What do you think is the most important action item you took to grow your business to where it is today? If you could distill it down.
Yeah. I mean, growth, forward growth, continuing.
Yeah, but what specifically? Like if you could, I don't know. Growth is too generic. Let's try to get a little bit more specific.
Well, growth as in opening another location and then opening another location. So duplicating what I had done, duplicating the blueprint, and doubling and then tripling and then quadrupling. So that was definitely, so literal growth, in that respect. And I just happen to be, that's how my mind works. I'm just constantly like, I scan and I see opportunities, I see gaps. I'm able to, I'm kind of a problem solver. Ooh, I could do that. Ooh, I could do that. So that's just kind of how my mind works. And so, just kind of, and also being really aligned, and mindfulness comes into play there, really being aligned with what my true, refer to it as home frequency, my true self, and really going within and asking myself what is in most alignment with what I'm trying to do. What are the moves that I make that I could make that are most in alignment with my true self? And so that kind of being the guiding force to my growth, because I would tend to overextend myself quite a bit and get myself in too many cookie jars. And, I have like 3 other businesses that I could be running right now that I started and then was like, okay, wait, now you just back off and slow down. That's part of the work-life balance. So, but
I had someone on my show who actually said, make sure everything contributes to the ecosystem.
There it is.
She was like, I started realizing I was just doing too many things. And then I have to say, how can I make this relate back to my business right now? And if I can't, it's got to go.
Yep. Absolutely.
What advice do you have for other women as they try to grow their business and hit multiple 6 figures to 7 figures and beyond?
It's kind of going to be sort of on a more, I don't know, you could even use the word spiritual level, but really it's about, again, checking in with, I think for longevity, you have to be doing something that you love. You have to be doing something that you feel, whether it's a contribution to society or it's a contribution to yourself and your family, you have to be making decisions that are aligned with who you truly are. And I think, for people there's a lot of people who want to leave the corporate world and start their own business, but they don't really know what to do. I remember a book, and I can't remember the author right now, but it's a book that I had decades ago. It was called Do What You Love and the Money Will Follow. And I need to find that again because I just thought of it. I don't know if you know the book I'm talking about.
I've heard it as a quote so many times. I didn't know it was a book.
Yeah, there's a book. Okay. And I'm going to go look that up also when we get off this call.
If we can find it, we'll put it in the show notes.
Proper credit. Yeah. But that's really what it is. It's just kind of like what is the reason? What is the intent behind what you're doing ultimately on a deeper level? If you peel it all back, what is really, and it's kind of getting to ideas of and conversation of purpose, sort of life purpose. So, but I think, checking in with yourself and asking yourself those questions, I think is probably the most important foundational piece of growing as an entrepreneur.
So where can we find you? Origins Education and Origins Curriculum and any social networks that you want people, if they want to connect with you and get to know more about you.
Yeah, absolutely. So my website, originscurriculum.com, you can check us out. And one of the things that we have, and this is something I would offer to you or anybody in your audience, we have created something it's basically masterclass for kids. And so we're partnering with experts in their fields from every different type of topic you can think about to create these in-depth courses for kids from, pre-K all the way through high school age. They're designed to be implemented over the 1 to 2 week period, so a little bit more in-depth course. And we do a partnership where we do all the promotion. We have the templates, we have everything. You just have something you want to share, can be anything you can think of, and we can create a course together. So if anybody's interested in that, you can look at our website under, I think it's under contact. There's a collaborate link. So click on that and check it out. You can visit with us. Social media, all of our social media is origins.curriculum. So TikTok, Facebook, Instagram is just at origins.curriculum. So
very cool.
That's where you can find us.
Thank you. I will definitely check that out. So what is one philosophy, mantra, or quote you try to run your business by?
Can I come back to the do what you love and the money will follow?
Yes, why not?
because that is really what is shown true for me. Following my passions, doing what I feel is truly important and what my mark, what I'm here for, doing what I'm here for, which is what I love. And, started off with, supporting my children and now it's, really trying to support the planet. So
it's fascinating. This has been so intriguing to me, this whole conversation. Again, I've never had someone in this sector before on my show. So I was really excited when you responded and said you wanted to be on, because I was like, yes, I've never talked to someone in the preschool sector like in depth about this. Yeah. So again, thank you for joining me on this interview, Genevieve. And again, for our audience, if you're listening to this show and you found it informative and valuable, share it, especially if people are interested in preschool, the curriculum with preschool, or even beyond that, and then daycare and all that kind of stuff. This could be a really interesting show for them. So please share it. And until next time, you can definitely find me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Kiri Mohan. Tag me on Instagram at virtually Kiri. Thank you, Genevieve. Again, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It was wonderful to visit with you.